I'm also incredibly single, but I'm only telling you that to give you your third, so that's not part of my... You're welcome. So I always like to say that all of the books on my bookshelves are books that I've either read or intend to read someday, with the exception of one. And that's because I'm afraid of it. And it's not like The Shining or Anne Rice books. They're fine. But this one, I just couldn't do it. And I'm going to have to work my way up to saying the title. And the reason goes back to when I was 12 years old on one of my annual family vacations to a little town in Florida where my relatives lived. On a typical day, we would spend the day at the beach with my cousins, and steps away was the apartment that we had rented, which was very convenient to run back and grab a snack or use the bathroom, which is where I was coming from one day when my older cousin, Douglas, had also apparently come back from the beach. And he was 15 years older than me, so I was the little cousin he barely ever spoke to, but that day he did. And he began to tell me how I had grown into such a nice young woman and how pretty I was and how I had a nice figure and he liked my bikini. And I remember how incredibly self-conscious I felt. This extreme discomfort that I didn't fully even understand. And I also thought, boy, I really wish I had that beach cover-up my mom told me I was always supposed to wear when I came back from the beach. And I think she got that from the Book of Etiquette, which she actually literally used to read to us on a regular basis. It's the Amy Vanderbilt version, as I recall. That's a page turner for you, if you're interested. But that's not the book that I'm afraid of, although maybe I should be. But anyway, I got myself out of that apartment and back to the beach and spent the rest of the vacation avoiding my cousin and his attentions. And I never told my parents because I think I didn't know how. In my family, it was taboo to talk about anything relating to the body or sex or even say the word sex. I remember actually if something like a tampon commercial came on, my father would say, "Don't you have any homework to do?" He'd try to send us out of the room. We were like, "Dad, it's the summer." But thankfully, so I didn't have a way to talk about it. But thankfully, these annual vacations subsided soon after that, and we didn't have a lot of occasions to see that side of the family. So it eventually became a faded memory, something that I must have imagined. And then one day when I was in my mid-20s, I was living in Philadelphia with a couple of roommates, and a package arrived on the doorstep. It was a large envelope with my cousin's name on the return address, and I pulled out from it a paperback novel. There was no note. The novel was The Fear of Flying. I wasn't familiar with it or the author, Erica Young. So I really had no reason to be holding it like it was a pair of dirty underwear, except that I was getting that same feeling that I did when I was a little girl, that something's just very wrong here. So I called my father just to find out if he gave out my address. Didn't give him any details, and he said he had. And he also told me I should call my cousin because my cousin had some medical problems and I should be more caring and compassionate. He gave me his number, which I pretended to write down. And over that next year, I found that I heard that his conditions were worsening, and eventually it turned out that he died. And I felt nothing but relief that I wasn't going to have to be in his presence again, and I wasn't going to have to be in that position again. Except for around that time, I was experiencing other incidents of unpleasant encounters, people I should have been able to trust. I thought a boss, a doctor, and I was wrestling with believing these things happen, that they happened to me. Am I imagining it? Am I misinterpreting it? And I decided that the answer was in that book. So it was still sitting on my shelf unread, but I was afraid to read it. So I gave it to one of my roommates to read, which is what you did back in the day before Goodreads and Amazon reviews. Speaking of Amazon reviews, I did read one recently, a 1-star by an irate woman who had given it to her daughter-in-law, who was deathly afraid to fly. And she was mortified to find out later that the book was basically all about sex. But I knew that because my roommate reported that back to me, and I knew it before I pulled it out of the envelope. And they say you can learn a lot from books, and from that one I learned that intuition, however young and naive, is a powerful thing. And then I had to learn to trust it. Thank you.